So before we move off Amazon, then what did success look like? Obviously, it was successful for you. The statistic that's bandied around quite often, which dates from 2015, so it's quite old, is that the average self-published book might sell 200 copies in a lifetime. How did you rate compared to that, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, I hate reading sold a lot more than that. Another thing that I would do, and I'm not sure if it's really possible to do it that much anymore, but I would set it up so that I would give away my book for free. And that would really, really increase the transactions. They're not really sales if they're free, but I would, like, in one day of like free books, I would share like 15,000 copies. And so for me, I was like, that's my advertising, because then 15,000 people have my book. And then maybe when they're at a soccer game and they see another parent who says, oh, my kid hates to read, then they might be like, oh my goodness, there's this great book. Let me tell you about it. So taking advantage of times when you can make your book for free on Amazon. For me, that was like an investment in like spreading the word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like, it's really hard to say, like, because, and then there's all these other things that you can do on Amazon. Like there's a program where people, it's sort of like Netflix, where they like sign up and then they can download as many books as they want. And then Amazon will pay you for the numbers of pages read. Mm-hmm. And it's like pennies. It's such a small amount, but if people actually are reading your book every time they read it, then you'll get paid. So that's why it's really hard to tell like how many books are sold. Right. They don't even tell me how many books are sold. They just tell me how many pages are read. Right. But I can tell several hundreds of pages are read every single day.
Right.
I mean, my books have like 3 words on a page, so it's pretty good. But kids are reading it, and I know that. So it's really hard to say, but I think I calculated like, I don't know, maybe like 75,000 copies were downloaded that were not free or something like that. A lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but you're talking about downloads. So we're still talking about ebooks. How did the print on demand do?
The print on demand was a lot less. You know, I mean, there was a time when and I would also just look at it like per week. And so it was like, I don't know, like 10 books per week, mm-hmm. something like that. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you know, now it's like when I went to HarperCollins, which I did for other reasons other than just sales. Mm-hmm. But the sales, I had to pull it off. I had to pull it. So that sort of changed everything in terms of my Amazon popularity. Okay. I pulled 2 books, but I still had 2 other self-published books on there. But those 2 others weren't selling as well, because the more books you have, the more Amazon will promote your books.
Right. So before we go to HarperCollins, because I know that everyone's chomping on the bit and they want to hear that part. But before we go there, so we've talked about like maximize as a self-publisher, maximizing your sales on Amazon. But there was also, as you said, this book originally was sold to a publisher that specialized in schools mm-hmm. and libraries. So I imagine there was a great market there. How did you manage to reach that market as a self-publisher? Did you manage to get into school libraries? And
that is one of the reasons why I wanted to go to HarperCollins, because I sort of felt like for a children's book, a lot of schools and libraries want it not to be self-published. They want the legitimacy of the quality that comes from something that is traditionally published. That said, I live in Washington State, and here in Washington State, there are tons of schools and libraries that have the book. And probably it's because I'm very active in things like SCBWI, and they also have a great thing called Nerd Camp, where writers and teachers can meet each other. And so my personal outreach has allowed local schools and libraries to get to know me, and they're happy to share my book, and they really are very enthusiastic about it. But I can't go to every mm-hmm. state, you know. So I think that it really helps to have
even within Washington, I'm sure that there are people listening right now who want to know how you actually got that going. How did you get the personal outreach going? Did you cold call schools? Like, did you do flyers? How did you actually get in there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I really recommend in Bellingham, they have this thing called Nerd Camp, which is great. And I go to that every year. And it's like teachers and writers, they're for a whole day, they get together and they talk about writing, and they try to solve issues that they have, really in a cooperative, fun way. Let's see. Oh, just also like everyone I know is like, oh, somebody might say, my sister is a reading therapist. And then I'll be like, can I have her email? Let me talk to her. So if you really sort of like open up your network, even if you might not be a teacher or a librarian, you probably know a lot of people who are teachers and librarians. And so that's what I would do. I would just talk about it and get those second or third hand connections and introductions. Mm-hmm. And that's how I would do it.
So then you had I'm guessing here, because we actually haven't talked about this yet. You had I Hate Reading written and ready to go. And at that point you decided for this book to really like fire on, with both engines, that you needed a traditional publisher. Did HarperCollins find you, or did you find HarperCollins? Did you go through the whole submission process? Did you get an agent? Like, how did you actually go after your publisher?
I was actually having fun with my self-publishing, and I really like self-publishing. I learned a lot. I liked to be in control. There were lots of great things about it. But one thing that I didn't like was my books, like I said, they're 100, this one's 110. The other ones are even longer. And a lot of them are like solid yellow on a page. Like the whole page is yellow or purple. Like they're very colorful and flat, solid colors. And sometimes when I would order the books just for myself, the ink wasn't even. There were little blotches. And it's not like, my books aren't really typical. Even if you had an illustration, you probably wouldn't have like a solid color, like all on the page that's 8 by 10. And so I was really not happy with the quality. But I do think that actually the quality of self-publishing generally is really good for most people. So I'm not saying the quality is bad for everyone, but I was, not into it. And I was selling enough that I was like, gee, maybe I should look into publishing it myself. And so I priced it out. I priced out how much would it cost to print 10,000 copies. And it was actually fairly cheap. It was cheaper than print on demand. I was psyched. But then I realized like, oh, I'm going to have to distribute it. That's the thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be the person to like put them in the envelope. And so I said, well, why don't I explore trying to get an actual publisher to publish my book? And I said that I went to get an MFA in writing for children, and it was a low residency program. So twice a year we would go and stay in a dorm for 2 weeks. And my roommate I had an agent. And so I called her and I was like, hey, can I talk to your agent about like how, how to go from self-published to regular traditional publishing? And I called her agent and just was sort of talking to her for advice. And by the end of the conversation, she was like, if you want, I could try to sell your book. And I was like, okay. And so that, I know I talked to her in the summer, and then it was right before Christmas that HarperCollins made the offer for two. So that, I don't know. I think she sort of started talking to editors in the fall.
Right.
So
that's
how it all
pretty,
happened.
yeah, that's a pretty quick sale. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
So I know it's early days yet, and I want to turn this over to everybody else's questions, but so how has it been? So the first question is, you launched June 15th, 16th. A lot of people have been having a really hard time launching during this COVID kind of season. but you did really well. You're on the Amazon #1 new release list. So congratulations on that. And how like, do you experience any of this? Does a launch feel like a launch? Because, you know, apart from talking to people like me on Zoom, you're not out there having big bookstore openings. You're not in the schools talking to kids. So how is this feeling as a launch for you?
Yeah, it's very weird. I'm glad that I have experience with Amazon because I can then go look. I have this thing called Author Central if you're self-published. And even if you're self-published or not, I guess like all my books are included under me as the author. So I can look at my ranking, and yeah, I can see my ranking going up because of this launch, which is really cool. So I have a little bit of a meter.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, there would be no meter. I was told that it is available in independent bookstores and Target and Walmart, which made me really psyched because Target and Walmart are open and, you know, busy
Mm-hmm.
during the COVID closures of many other stores. But when I've peeked into those stores, I haven't seen it on the shelf. So it must be still in the back room in some of those. So I've actually never seen it in a bookstore. So I don't know. So it is a little bit strange because, you know, everybody's staying at home and, you know, but I actually did a Zoom launch with the Imagine Children's Museum in Washington State, and that was super fun. I don't know. I think because they're a children's museum, they have a great outreach, and I think there were like a couple hundred people watching, and that was awesome. So I don't know. It's kind of wait and see, actually.
Well, best of luck. I don't think you're going to need a lot of it. I think that you're already living the dream for most of us, but good luck on this big launch with HarperCollins. And now if everybody wants to turn on their video, stay muted, but turn on your video and raise your hand if you have a question, and Beth can start answering some questions from the. Anybody have a question? Eric, why don't you go first?
Find the unmute button. Hi, Beth. Thank you very much.
Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you.
Curiosity of a father, did your boys start to read? Did they read your books?
Yes, they did eventually start to read. When Harry Potter came out, that really helped. My kids really liked Harry Potter, and it was something that engaged them. So I think a lot of it is that you have to find a book that you really like. It's not necessarily that they didn't like to read, it's that maybe they hadn't really explored the right books.
The right book.
But also, you know, when most elementary schools that I know of, they have this 20 minutes of reading requirement, and they were like playing with their Legos or whatever, and they don't want to be interrupted, you know. You're like, okay, time for your reading, and they're like, no, you know. So,
yep.
But they do like to read now.
Good, thank you.